Min-maxing is the process of going all in on just a couple of stats while completely neglecting the other ones. This term comes from tabletop RPGs, but in Pokemon terms, this refers to the distribution of a Pokemon's base stats by the developers. Garchomp is the opposite of a min-maxed Pokemon, for example. All of its stats are pretty good and well-rounded, with the lowest being its 80 special attack, a stat that's still usable. Wobbuffet, on the other hand, is a min-maxed Pokemon. It has an astronomically high HP stat of base 190, while all of its other stats are completely terrible. With Wobbuffet, they went all in on one strength, and that's plain to see. Let's take a look at some of the most min-maxed Pokemon of all time, and how their stats define their identities in competitive singles. First, we must discuss the very strange existence of Wobbuffet. A truly bizarre Pokemon design all around, one of the most unique of all time. Wobbuffet is a psychic type with, of course, an absurdly min-maxed stat distribution, with massive HP and terrible everything else. Wobbuffet also has one of the most limited move pools in the series. It can only learn 8 moves, none of which are direct attacks. The way that Wobbuffet deals damage is by reflecting damage back to the enemy, because it can learn Counter and Mirror Coat. Counter is a move that, once you're struck by a physical move, you reflect double the damage back to the enemy. Mirror Coat does the same, but for special attacks. And this is the only way that Wobbuffet can deal any damage. It's a punching bag that does a funny boing sound effect and reflects the damage just dealt to it back to the opponent. So then why would anyone willingly attack Wobbuffet if they know exactly what it's going to do? Well, willingness is not part of the equation, because Wobbuffet has the ability Shadow Tag, an ability that prevents the opposition from being able to switch out. One of the most powerful abilities in the whole game. When Wobbuffet is in, you are forced to contend with it, and often you are forced to attack it, much to your dismay, as it counters or mirror coats you into oblivion. It can also use Encore to force you to repeat the last move you used, therefore guaranteeing that it can counter or mirror coat, since you are trapped there, forced to repeat yourself, and soon to be deceased. Another option Wobbuffet has is Safeguard, a way to possibly counteract an enemy that has locked into a status move. You can Encore, Safeguard, and then freely switch to an ally who is immune to status now. Destiny Bond is another option, and Destiny Bond is a move that, when used, if your opponent knocks you out, they will faint as well. You bring them with you. Wobbuffet is a bit of a trickster. It's all about taking hits and clapping back with reflected damage. It's like it's a little bit of a bastard of a Pokemon, isn't it? And you know what's interesting about its stat distribution? Because it has such high HP and such low stats everywhere else, there is no need to invest EVs in HP on this guy. The base HP is good enough. What you really desperately need is any semblance of bulk anywhere else. So Wobbuffet will commonly just invest fully into its defense and special defense, which you rarely see. Usually, Pokemon want to invest in HP, but Wobbuffet's HP is already high enough. So this min-maxed stat distribution makes the EV spreads on it look pretty unique. Wobbuffet is actually extraordinarily overpowered because it can guaranteed trap things, and in fact with Encore it can even fully PP stall enemies, forcing them to struggle in certain situations. In Gen 3 it can actually cause infinite battles, as if a Wobbuffet is up against a Wobbuffet, they will eventually each run out of PP and start clicking Struggle against one another. However, because Struggle was a recoil move back then that didn't deal set percentage damage, your Struggle is so weak because your attack is so low that it doesn't out-damage leftovers, and these Wobbuffets are just stuck there forever clicking Struggle against one another, never dying. Wobbuffet's ability Shadow Tag is universally banned in all competitive singles formats for its overpowered ability to trap enemies. And in Gens 3 and 4, Wobbuffet itself is tagged Uber, which is quite funny, this complete weirdo Pokemon on the level of legendaries, and it actually is commonly used in Uber's formats for its ability to trap enemies with pretty incredible consistency actually. And I think this stat distribution serves it well. It actually ends up being really bulky because of its incredible base HP and EVs invested in defenses to make up for its low base stats. This would be an example of an incredibly successful min-maxed Pokemon, and one that benefits greatly from having min-maxed stats. Up next we have Shuckle, one of the most iconic min-maxed Pokemon. This guy's a bit of a fan favorite for pretty clear reasons. It's a goofy yet endearing visual design, and the min-maxed stats make it truly stand out amongst the crowd. Shuckle, as you can see, has atrocious stats in its HP, attack, special attack, and speed. But take a look at those damned defenses. It has base 230 defense and special defense. This is the definition of min-maxed right here. Goodness gracious. Competitively speaking, Shuckle is a very strange Pokemon. When it debuted in Gen 2, it was sort of a viable choice on hard stall because with its bug rock typing, it's a decent Snorlax switch in. It is neutral to ground while resisting normal, and can sort of just sit there and take a beating while resting repeatedly. It's actually good at walling a lot of the Gen 2 metagame. It's just so incredibly passive, and it does nothing but take hits. That's kind of the problem with it. In Gen 2, a bug rock typing was acceptable defensively, but as the series has gone on, this became less and less true. When Stealth Rock came out, this was devastating for Shuckle Nation, as Shuckle is weak to rock. So if Stealth Rocks are up, which happens a lot of the time, Shuckle's going to take a massive quarter of its health simply for switching in. In lower tiers, Shuckle has found places to exist. It does have Stealth Rock itself, has the good utility option of Knockoff, and Encore, which can be used as a bit of a disruptive status option. It can poison the enemy. And in Gen 5, you could also run its hidden ability Contrary for a funny set. Contrary inverts stat stage changes, so you could run Shell Smash on Shuckle, and Shell Smash, usually, is an offensive boost. It raises your attack, special attack, and speed, while lowering your defense and special defense. But in this case, Shell Smash will actually raise your defense and special defense by one stage, while lowering all of your other stats. There are moves that just do this without having to run Contrary, like Stockpile and Cosmic Power, but Shuckle doesn't get any of those. It's got to run Contrary Shell Smash to get defensive boosts. But hey, this is a pretty funny one, isn't it? Contrary also gives you insurance against stat drops, which is useful. It's a bit of a meme set, isn't it? But it's something. It's certainly something. The main thing Shuckle is known for in competitive singles was actually an option that came out in Gen 6, Sticky Web. Sticky Web was a new hazard for bug types introduced in Gen 6 that lowers the speed of opponents when they switch in, instead of dealing damage. And it's an amazing entry hazard that is incredibly powerful for hyper-offensive teams. Aggressive teams always want to be outrunning the enemy, which is why Sticky Web is so powerful. Shuckle is well suited to the role of a lead hazard setter, because it has the ability Sturdy. Sturdy basically acts the same way a Focus Sash does. If you're at full HP and you would have been one-hit KO by an incoming attack, you will instead survive on 1 HP. So it gives you a complete safety net to set your hazard without worry. This also frees up the item slot. Most hazard setting leads will run a Focus Sash for that purpose, but Shuckle has the inbuilt Focus Sash from its ability, so it can afford to run Mental Herb. Mental Herb is a consumable item that will cure you of certain debilitating effects like Encore and Disable, but most importantly, Taunt. Taunt is commonly used against hazard setting leads to prevent them from making their hazards, but Shuckle has insurance against an incoming hit and against an incoming taunt. And it's also really, really great that it also gets Stealth Rock, so in plenty of situations you can set both of your hazards. This is where Shuckle's bulk also comes into play, because in certain lead matchups the enemy won't be powerful enough to actually 2-hit KO you even. So you can set both your hazards and then maybe disrupt them with Encore. This could prevent an enemy from rapid spinning you in a useful turn of events. You can also use Infestation to trap them and then freely switch into some ally that can punish them. Shuckle is actually a really fantastic Sticky Web setting lead, and I think if it existed in Gen 9 it would probably be used for this role. Yet again, it's very effective at the job. Shuckle is a funny joke of a Pokemon, but considering that, it has pretty impressive competitive viability, I think. Even with its terrible typing and low HP, that actually makes it less bulky than it would look at first glance. But hey, those defense stats are truly outstanding, and it is probably historically the best Sticky Web setter in the game, I would say. Another one of the most well-known min-maxed Pokemon is Mega Beedrill. A popular Mega form because it turned a terrible Pokemon into a actual viable choice through the art of min-maxing. Mega Beedrill obviously has improved stats over its base form, as every Mega does, but the thing about this is that Beedrill was a terrible foundation to begin with. It has such a low base stat total, but Mega Beedrill has been as efficient with the stats as you possibly can be. Mega Beedrill has an incredible 150 base attack, monstrous 145 base speed, and incredibly low stats everywhere else. Notably, it has an even lower special attack stat than regular Beedrill does, borrowing those stats to distribute elsewhere, which is the definition of min-maxing, isn't it? Special attack, obviously a useless stat for Beedrill, so this is a huge benefit. Mega Beedrill also gets an incredible new ability upon Mega Evolving. Adaptability, which grants a boost to the Pokemon's same type attack bonus. Now moves of the same type deal 2 times damage instead of the regular 1.5 times damage. Mega Beedrill is very interesting because this is about as much as you could do for Beedrill to make it competitively viable, and it is a huge, huge increase in its power. But it's still kind of not that good, unfortunately. Mega Beedrill really suffers from attacking options that don't feel very spammable, and meta threats in OU that give it a lot of trouble. Mega Beedrill is very prone to being shut down by Landorus Therian, one of the most common Pokemon in Gen 6 and 7 OU, who can very easily switch in, intimidate Mega Beedrill to lower its attack, and then resist both of its stab types, both bug and poison. You can hit them with knockoff to at least shut them down a little bit, but Mega Beedrill is really hurting from not having a great option to punish a simple Landorus Therian switch in, aka one of the most common things that ever happens. In general, bug and poison stab are kind of bad stab types, and Mega Beedrill is very vulnerable to its rock weakness and general frailty, of course. It is very nice to have stab U-turn with adaptability and an incredibly high speed. It makes you a pretty powerful pivot, and at least a Landorus Therian coming in can be pivoted against, but overall Mega Beedrill does feel like a bit of a waste compared to other powerful physical attacking Megas in Gen 6 and 7, like Mega Lopunny, who is much more generally consistent and powerful. It actually does have Ice Punch to threaten Landorus Therian with, and it has the ability Scrappy, making its stab types even more spammable. Mega Medicham is another option. While it's slower, it has significantly more breaking power, thanks to its ability Pure Power, granting doubled attack. Mega Beedrill is an awkward choice in OU that feels a little bit too inconsistent to justify using. Not even the most efficient min-maxing and the greatest glow-up of all time could save Mega Beedrillium from the simple existence of Landorus Therian, a true tragedy for the ages. At least it's ranked UU though, that's a significant step up from Beedrill's terrible base state. It's certainly admirable in that sense. Gen 7's Ultra Beasts all have base stat totals of 570, which is pretty high, but among each of them there's certainly a pretty huge disparity in how they're distributed. Take a look at Celesteela, for example. Very evenly distributed stats here. Has pretty low speed, but everything else is pretty uniform, wouldn't you say? And then we have Kartana, who truly spec'd all in to one absurd stat, didn't it? Kartana has an unbelievable 181 base attack, one of the highest attack stats in Pokemon history. It also has an impressive defense and speed stat, and everything else is extremely low, with its lowest stat being a 31 special defense. I would go as far as to say that this is one of the most powerful stat distributions we've ever seen in Pokemon, because Kartana is extraordinarily good competitively. With a Grass Steel typing, it's having no issues hitting the field. It's nothing like Mega Beedrill. Thanks to its high defense, it's not even that frail. And it can hit incredibly hard, especially with the help of Z-moves, which are introduced in its debut game of Gen 7. Now, at least Kartana has a sort of weirdly limited physical move pool. It has good options, don't get me wrong. It has Leaf Blade for stab, Smart Strike for a steel option, Sacred Sword for coverage, and Z-Giga Impact is used on this as a powerful neutral hit, but Kartana is definitely vulnerable to common presences in Gen 7 OU, like bulky Zapdos, Celesteela, and Ferrothorn. Even still though, it's hard not to feel the sheer metagame impact this guy has. It is very common and one of the most prominent win conditions in the game, with a solid amount of item variety it can use. And I think that this might be an example of min-maxing going too far. This is just a crazy stat distribution. 181 base attack is even better than most box legendaries, for goodness sake. I think it's better than all of them except for like Mega Mewtwo. And it certainly doesn't help that Kartana's ability Beast Boost can help it ramp even further on the attack. With Beast Boost, your highest stat receives a +1 boost if you attack and KO another Pokemon. So it's getting KOs and then ramping up its attack even further. I have to say that I dislike Kartana, to be honest. I disliked its metagame impact. I dislike looking at it. Weird origami guy that for some reason has more attack than God himself. He's just a weirdo that at the time represented everything wrong with modern Pokemon, in my mind. Is Kartana a fan favorite? If so, I apologize to the fans, but I'm a bit of a Kartana hater, I have to be honest. I'll tell you who I don't hate though, Steelix. Steelix is cool. This was a new evolution for Onix, released in Generation 2, and this was a great Pokemon for its time, and boy was this min-maxed. Steelix has an unbelievable base 200 defense, that's astronomical, and its other stats are overall quite low. At least it has an okay 75 HP to support that defense stat, better than what Shuckle gets, but has low speed and just low everything else. Steelix had a great start in competitive. In the Gen 2 OU metagame, it's one of the few things in the world that can take on the king Snorlax. Steelix resists normal with its massive base defense. It can even shrug off Earthquake from Snorlax. Steelix has Curse to boost itself up and match the boosts of an enemy Snorlax, and it even has Roar to force them out and win that 1v1. With Earthquake, it has a great stab option, and if you want to be aggressive and trade with an enemy, it even has Explosion to go out with a bang. Steelix was a very successful Pokemon in Gen 2 OU, and one of the most commonly seen Pokemon in that format. Unfortunately, this Pokemon wouldn't really stand the test of time, and in the very next generation, the cracks were already starting to form for Steelix and its future. As a bulky ground type, it now had new competition from Pokemon like Swampert and Flygon. Now, even though these Pokemon pale in comparison to Steelix on the physical defense stat, they are overall more useful, either offensively or in terms of utility. Steelix is slow, its water weakness is catching up to it, and it doesn't really generate much initiative. Steelix is extremely bad against the common Pokemon Skarmory and the common Pokemon Gengar, and it's a bit of a death sentence. At least Swampert can threaten them with big water moves. Steelix can barely touch these two. It wasn't all bad though. Steelix is sometimes seen in the Gen 3 OU metagame for its unique ability to switch in against electric types safely. With a steel ground typing, you are neutral to the usual electric type coverage. They commonly carry HP Ice and HP Ground, both of which will deal peanuts to a Steelix. Steelix also happens to serve this purpose while being pretty good against Aerodactyl. More so than other ground types are because of its steel typing, making it resistant to Double Edge and Rock Slide ×4. Steelix is also pretty damn solid against Snorlax, still, of course, and that has its value. It is immune to poison, which is good, and it can also help out your team against Tyranitar a little bit, which is always very nice. Steelix is a bit hard to fit on teams in Gen 3 OU compared to the more common, bulky ground types because of all those flaws I mentioned, but it has enough unique going for it that it sees use occasionally. In Gen 3 it was respectable, but after that it kind of fell off a cliff, as its passive nature and low damage output started to catch up to it, and it just couldn't really contend with new, modern Pokemon anymore. Especially in Gen 5, when the new Excadrill released. A new steel ground type that is far better, more offensively potent, and with better utility in rapid spin. In the Gen 6 games, they attempted to breathe some new life into Steelix with its Mega form. Mega Steelix was pretty promising, and it was pretty min-maxed as well, still having that signature enormous defense, low speed, and low special attack. But Mega Steelix was a bit more offensively threatening, with an improved attack stat of 125. But despite seeming promising on the surface, Mega Steelix was not fantastic and competitive. Remember, you can only have one Mega per team, and it was just better to run Mega Metagross in Gen 6 as an aggressive steel type, or even Mega Aggron, to be honest, who is itself a really min-maxed Pokemon. Mega Aggron is just a mono steel type, which makes it a little bit unique, at least sets it apart from Excadrill, who already exists. And Mega Aggron is much better at taking hits because of its ability Filter, which reduces super effective damage. Mega Aggron is more commonly seen as a hard wall. Mega Steelix, on the other hand, sort of struggles to find a place to be used, especially when it's hogging that Mega slot. Its new ability is Sand Force, which grants bonus damage to steel grounded rock type attacks in the sand. Just kind of an awkward ability to use on this. Realistically, this is not going to fit on a sand team, especially when Excadrill is right there and has the much better ability Sand Rush. This really goes to show that stats are not always everything for competitive viability. Even though Excadrill seems so much worse when you look at them side by side, Excadrill is the far more desirable Pokemon as a ground steel type because it's more flexible, it has better options, better abilities, stronger utility, and doesn't require that damn Mega Stone to exist. Mega Steelix ended up in the RUBL tier in Gen 6, a little bit disappointing for a Pokemon with such impressive looking stats. Still a very cool visual Mega though, I like the debris floating around it, one of the cooler concepts they came up with on the visual side. Up next we have Xurkitree, an insane Pokemon for insane people. I like this guy. He's kind of like Kartana if he was balanced, because this has a massive special attack stat of 173 and extraordinarily average stats elsewhere. What makes it much more manageable compared to Kartana is its poor defensive typing comparatively. It's mono-electric, which is neutral to a lot and of course weak to ground. And it's also kind of slow, only 83 base speed. It's not outrunning most offensive Pokemon in Gen 7. Unfortunately though, being reasonable and balanced in Gen 7 OU is a death sentence because nobody used this thing, did they? Xurkitree was not very common, and it was unfortunately one of those Pokemon stuck in limbo. It was ranked UUBL, meaning it was too powerful for the lower tiers but not powerful enough to be ranked OU properly. When it comes to electric types in Gen 7, you would much rather run Tapu Koko, who sets useful electric terrain, has the better electric fairy dual typing, and is also very fast with pivoting. Tapu Koko is way easier to fit on teams. Xurkitree is one of the few Pokemon in the game that gets access to Tail Glow, which is a great boosting move that raises your special attack by 3, which is a bit above average. But this is a terrible Pokemon at finding opportunities to boost. It is so frail and slow, it's rarely going to be in a position where it can stomach an incoming hit and get this boost off. And if it does, can it guarantee that whatever's coming in is slower than it and threaten to buy it? It's a tough one. It's a tough one to justify Xurkitree usage. But there was one set I remember that was actually kind of interesting on this, and that was Z Hypnosis Xurkitree. If you use a Psychium Z with Hypnosis, you will actually receive a speed boost and also put the enemy to sleep at the same time. And this is possibly what you need to get the ball rolling, because with a speed boost, all of a sudden Xurkitree is actually, faster than things and dealing a lot of damage now. The disruption from Hypnosis also lets you get ahead of momentum. And with Beast Boost to ramp up your special attack and use that as your form of special attack boosting rather than Tail Glow, you might be off to the races. Unfortunately though, this is incredibly inconsistent, of course, because Hypnosis only has 60% accuracy, which is unreliable, but also you just have to hope that they're not running Tapu Koko, who sets electric terrain, because electric terrain just means everything on the field is immune to sleep if it's grounded. You also got to hope they're not running Tapu Fini, for goodness sake, because Tapu Fini grants immunity to all status. And these are both very common, so you got to dodge 2 of the most common Pokemon in the game and also land the move to begin with. So this was not a popular strategy for obvious reasons. I like Xurkitree with its funny name. It sounds like circuitry. That's wordplay right there. And it looks like Christmas lights. It looks like wiring, electric wiring. Unfortunately though, it kind of stinks, despite its very min-maxed special attack stat. But of all the Ultra Beasts in existence, Xurkitree is not the most min-maxed, and nor is Kartana. The most min-maxed beast, and also the worst of all of the Ultra Beasts, is Guzzlord. And this is a Pokemon that might be in my bottom 5 of all time. I absolutely despise Guzzlord in every way. This guy is a hideous creature. And the stat distribution just defies logic. This guy is a Dark Dragon type with a huge HP stat of 223, dreadful defense and special defense 53 each, very low speed, and completely average offensive stats. Guzzlord is just absolutely all over the place. You'd think it's designed as a defensive Pokemon, similar to like a Wobbuffet, but with a Dark Dragon typing that is not tenable. This guy is ×4 weak to Fairy, and has plenty of debilitating weaknesses. It's just not a great type for a slow, bulky Pokemon. So is this supposed to be an offensive threat? Well, it's got very average attacking stats, and a non-existent speed stat, so that doesn't quite work either, does it? It kind of doesn't do anything, Guzzlord. And visually, this thing is a complete mess. It's got weird crab claws coming out of it, big mouth. This is just a disgusting Pokemon inside and out, and the min-maxed massive HP stat just adds insult to injury. A bizarre choice that doesn't help it. It doesn't help it very much. I would normally feel bad for these forgotten and mistreated Pokemon. I felt a bit bad for Mothim, another forgettable bug flying type, but Mothim is more endearing to me than Guzzlord. Does not look like he would appreciate my pity. He looks like he would kill me in an instant if I stepped foot in his presence. Looks like a sinister being all around, ugly inside and out, with evil intent and not even a shred of anything redeemable about his character that I can observe. If you're going to emit such a menacing aura, Guzzlord, and look so unapproachable, you'd better actually back that up with genuine fear-inducing power in-game, which you don't even have. What do you have, Guzzlord? Tell me what you have. I'm waiting. Oh wait, you're a weird eldritch being, can't even speak English, probably. What does the Pokédex have to say about a Guzzlord? Anything? Let's see. It says it has gobbled mountains and swallowed whole buildings, according to reports. It is one of the Ultra Beasts. That's all they have to say. It's one of the damn Ultra Beasts. Also, the concept of eating mountains, you just bit that directly from Larvitar, you bastard. That's his thing. He already eats mountains 20 years ago, Guzzlord. At least Larvitar eventually becomes Tyrannosif, and yet you are in your base state and with no possible character development to be had, Guzzlord. You are one of the Ultra Beasts, and that's all I can say about you. That's all there is to say about you. It is actually quite interesting comparing different sorts of min-maxed Pokemon. Sometimes the min-max stat distribution is a perfect fit for them, like in the case of Wobbuffet. And in some scenarios it's a bit too much, like in the case of Katana. In others, it does them no favors. Shuckle has never been fantastic, apart from its utility in setting sticky web. Steelix was okay at first in early games, but hasn't aged very well, despite seemingly having a very specialized stat distribution that at first you may think would help it succeed, but no, it doesn't. How absolutely intriguing is this? Who is your favorite of the min-maxed Pokemon I talked about today? Is it a Guzzlord? I hope not. Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.